in Section 282 of the Criminal Code, there's a defense for that charge. And the defense is that if a parent believes their child will suffer imminent harm, they cannot be found guilty of this charge. In fact, they don't even have to prove it. They just have to believe it.
This story is not easy to hear. I'm sure it was even more difficult to tell. Now, this whole story won't be available here on YouTube. A portion of it will be, of course, but the rest of it will be available on X. This is the story of a man and what he'll do to protect his daughter. So this is one of those stories of, well, you know, it won't happen to me. This is just something that's happening to other people. I want to welcome to the show Michael Jackson, of course, not an unfamiliar family name, home name. People recognize that name all over the place. Maybe don't recognize your face. But you have been in the news in Canada, and you have gone through some things, you and your family. And I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell your story. So where do we even start with this?
Well, I guess it all started with kind of a bad divorce. I live in the southeast corner of Saskatchewan, and I met a lady there when I moved here. Just after I moved here, she was from another country, and working here, we met and had a child, got married, and then within 2 years, it went really bad, and we had a divorce. And in that divorce, it was what you would consider a really badly contested divorce. You know, the way lawyers tear families apart in the courts in Canada, it's all about the money, right? And tearing families apart. And it went really bad. And I ended up with joint custody, but my ex ended up with more rights than I did, and which is kind of normal. I was fighting this in the appeal court of Saskatchewan. I've been in front of the appeal court of Saskatchewan many times, fighting over access to my daughter and the judgments that were made in family court because they were unjust. I found that in family court, truth doesn't matter. You can, with your affidavits, you know, when you're having hearings and access issues, you can put in all sorts of written documentation and evidence that proves what you're saying, but most of it gets ignored. What matters is like the tears that fall and the accusation sort of thing. That's what it's kind of everything's based on. So nothing really happens that's justice in family court, I find. Just like we're seeing across the country, there's not much justice anywhere.
So is it like an arbitrary sort of rule? Is there no like clear cut, this is these are the rules, and if this then that? It's more of a judgment made case by case kind of thing?
I think so. Like I can give a little example sort of thing. So I went to the appeal court on numerous judgments in the appeal court of Saskatchewan. And when I asked for the audio, the transcripts from those appeal court hearings, I was told by the registrar of the Court of Appeal that there are no transcripts in the Court of Appeal Saskatchewan, that there's no audio recordings taking in that room, so in that courtroom while these hearings are going on, which of course is a lie. And one thing we have to remember is that the registrar for the Court of Appeal, she reports directly to the Chief Justice of the province of Saskatchewan. And it was a different Chief Justice at that time, back in 2019. He's since retired. But he was the one who was actually instructing the registrar of the Court of Appeal not to provide me transcripts from hearings. So what I ended up doing was I did my own research and found out that across the country, other than I think it was New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, their court system was kind of behind the ball, and they were just starting to hire transcript services to start to, provide transcripts to litigants. But in Saskatchewan, they were just kind of denying people. And I went through, found out on their privacy policy, that's online, that it was a lie, that all audio, video, everything from the Court of Appeal under their privacy policy and freedom of information system is available to anybody who's involved in a case. And so I had to go back and fight again just to get the transcripts from the last 4 years of all the appeals I've had. And they finally gave them to me, but it was like pulling teeth. So they did exist, even though they told me they didn't.
So because you have the transcripts now, you can what's the point is just to show the lack of judiciousness. What is the purpose there?
Exactly, to show the bias and the way the court how would you say, the way the court applies the law while you're in there, like the way they restrict the truth from being spoken, the way they it's just open bias. Like when you go against them, they do everything in their power. As you learn from the woman in Quebec there, once you start to go against the higher courts, the appeal courts and things like that, they go out of their way to shut you up. And one way they try to do that is to never find or never give you justice, sort of thing. So even if you're there and you're righteous in what you're asking for, and it's legal, they'll deny it just because they want to shut you down and they want to punish you. For instance, I appealed my custody trial, like the judgment, after we had like a custody trial, like most people do, and it was horrendous. You know, I was shut down through the whole thing. I had never had a lawyer. I was always shut down when I went to speak my piece. And so I appealed that. After I was arrested and thrown in jail after this whole scenario, which we're going to go into, it took them 2 years to release the decision in the appeal court on my custody agreement. And what they said after I got out of jail, well, it doesn't really matter now anyways. That was their kind of excuse. And
so
they're kind of
before we
doing
get
the same
into
thing now with my access to my daughter now, where they just delay and delay and delay justice until they can figure out a way to put you down, and then it doesn't matter anymore. It becomes, the term is moot.
Right, and we've been hearing a lot of that term in the legal system in Canada in the past few years, and it's very frustrating to hear that. Yeah, very much so. So I want to ask, before all of this stuff that we're going to get into happened, where you found yourself in prison, or you found yourself in jail, you found yourself being taken away from your custody agreement. What was your initial custody agreement after all was said and done, after the divorce proceedings?
So it was joint custody. But then they go in and they kind of break up what joint custody means. So what they said was that her permanent residence, like her main residence, would still be with my ex-wife, which was in Regina, which is 3 hours away from me, which is one of the major issues I was appealing, because when couples get divorced, one partner is not allowed, especially the one in control of the residence, is not allowed to move 3 hours away unless they have a, real good reason, like a job or education or something like that. Mine, they allowed her just to move. And what it did is it caused huge financial hardship on me and a big division in trying to access my daughter, because it was a long drive, right? Like it's an 8-hour day to go pick her up. So, and
what was your relationship with your daughter?
She got primary residence. She also got decision-making, because in my trial, when I explained that I was a Christian man and I had certain beliefs, the judge, of course, just detested that, right? Any word in court that you're a born-again believer and you believe in God's law, it really offends the court, because you're going against what they're doing. And so she was given medical decision. She was given residence and just like major decision issues. But there's a caveat. It was in the thing that any decisions with respect to our daughter, Sarah, were to be discussed with me before they were made. So even though I didn't have a right to overrule, there was a caveat in there that said anytime there's a disagreement or anytime you go to make a decision for your daughter, has to be discussed with the father. And I think, she left in 2017, basically a few days after Christmas in 16, but we'll just say 2017. She never spoke to me once in the 3 years almost leading up to this. Not one single conversation about our daughter, not about her health, her school, her extracurricular activities, her spiritual needs. Zero. She refused to have one single conversation with me in the 3 years we were divorced before this situation happened.
And so then what was your relationship like with your daughter, and how much time did you spend with her after the divorce?
As much as I possibly could. We were extremely close. In fact, we were so close that it threatened the mother, I believe, which is a lot of reason why she's done what she's done. Sarah would never want to go home when she was with me. Like if we went for a week, we went to summer camp, whatever. We were just incredibly close, the two of us, like a real strong bond. And I rule in love, like when I, as a parent, as a father, I always kind of father in love sort of thing, never anger. And, you know, some parents are the opposite. Some parents, you know, they rule kind of in fear and in anger. And that's my ex, you know, like manipulation, anger, whenever she got mad, yelling, screaming. I was never like that. I was always a calm father and a loving father. And it really showed in our relationship. In fact, that when the RCMP did their investigation, once we went into hiding, every single witness they talked to said the same thing, that we had an extremely close relationship.
Wow. So I guess, well, let's just get into it then.
Okay.
What happened? What caused all of this scenario to go down?
Okay, so obviously we know what happened in 2019. And during that time in 2019, even though we'd never had any contact, me and the mother, since the divorce, I was texting her and sending her messages about wanting to discuss about what was going on in the world. And she refused, ignored me steadily. Then when it came down to the point where they were starting to do things to people, as in medical intervention for this problem, she still refused to talk to me. And I tried for 8 months, almost probably closer to 9, to get her to have a conversation about what her plan was with our daughter. And she refused. Not a single message, nothing. And again, that put her in contempt of court because the court order stated she had to have the discussion with me. So you can imagine how frustrating it is when you have a 7-year-old daughter who you love very much and you know what's going on out there. I've done my research. I studied. I watched things. I paid attention as a father. And I was trying to educate her as best I could. And she just ignored it all. She's kind of
Now,
always
I know that right now you're intentionally trying to be vague, and thank you very much, because this is how we can get these things out. But
Yep.
yes, we're talking about the jab, the medical intervention that the government brought in on us during COVID-19 and forced people into this position using all kinds of different methods, whether it was coercion or just outright lying to us. This is something that people were pressured into doing. Now, some people objected to doing that, and it seems like you fall in that camp. For what reason or whatever, that's well within your right. And we know this now, after all of this time, that people were subjugated to all kinds of things, losing their jobs, losing their access to their family, losing all kinds of things. And you fell into the camp of losing access to members of your family because of a discrepancy between yourself and your wife. I'm just trying to make this clear so everybody gets the picture perfectly. So you objected to it for your daughter, and your ex-wife insisted on it. And as far as I'm aware, because I have children, it was never mandated for children. It was never something that was insisted upon that children have to have. I know there was masking and there was social distancing, but kids were never forced into this. Am I correct on that?
Yes, they weren't. I mean, I think there was talk through the media which made people believe it was necessary. Like there was the threat, like, there were school boards in the United States who demanded it for registration, but I don't believe that happened in Canada. But what the media did was they portrayed it like it was happening in Canada. So I believe a lot of parents maybe felt that they had to, but with my ex, that wasn't the case. My ex, like I said, had weaponized our daughter. almost pretty much since she was born. And this was nothing but pure weaponization, manipulation in order to hurt me because she knew my position. And as I go along and explain what happened, you'll see that come out.
And unfortunately, because of the circumstances of what we are at liberty of saying on which platforms, the rest of this conversation will be on X. The link will be in the description down below. I hope all of you go and tune into that. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.